My family, my 1-year-old baby, we're facing homelessness and we've got nowhere to go.
In recent years, Australia has faced a growing economic challenge. Housing affordability has plummeted, property prices has skyrocketed, and inequality between renters and homeowners is rising. Despite numerous government subsidies and tax incentives, it feels as though housing has become out of reach for more and more Australians, particularly younger generations and low-income families. But what if there was a simpler, more effective solution, one that doesn't rely on more government spending or complicated tax breaks? In the late 19th century, a revolutionary economist named Henry George proposed a groundbreaking idea, a single tax on the value of land. George argued that land, unlike other resources, is a gift of nature that should benefit society as a whole. He suggested that by taxing the unimproved value of land, meaning the land itself, not the buildings or developments on it, society could create a fairer. This land value tax, or LVT, would reduce speculation, lowering housing costs, and generate revenue for public services, all without the economic distortions of other taxes. In this video, I'll explore how implementing a land value tax in Australia could address many of the country's economic challenges, from housing affordability to income inequality. By diving into Henry George's principles and examining real-world examples, we'll see how the LVT could be the key to a more sustainable and equitable Australian economy. And the beauty of this idea is that Australia already has the means to implement it. The Valuer General's Office in each state, including New South Wales, routinely assess the value of land across the state. This infrastructure provides a strong foundation for implementing a land value tax without overhauling the existing system. By exploring how a land value tax would work and the potential benefits for the economy, this video will argue that George's single tax idea could be a transformative solution for Australia. Understanding Henry George's philosophy. Henry George was an American economist and social reformer born in 1839. He wrote one of the most influential economic books of his time, Progress and Poverty, More Prosperous Economy, where he argued that poverty and economic inequality were largely due to the way society treated land ownership. George noticed that as cities grew and became more productive, land values increased dramatically, making landowners richer without any contribution on their part. Meanwhile, workers and entrepreneurs who actively contributed to the economy struggled to afford housing and land. George believed that land is different from other forms of property. Unlike houses or cars, land wasn't created by human effort. It's a natural resource that should be available for everyone's benefit. George argued that society should tax the value of land based on its location and desirability. This land value tax would allow communities to reclaim some of the wealth that landowners received simply due to owning valuable locations. This tax, he argued, would discourage speculative landholding, reduce inequality, and provide funds for public services. In his view, a land value tax would achieve three main goals. Number one, reduce land speculation. By taxing the unimproved value of land, landowners would be less likely to hold onto valuable land just to wait for its price to rise. Instead, they'd be motivated to put it to productive use. Number two, lowering housing costs. With less speculation, more land would be available for housing, which would reduce the overall cost of land and make housing more affordable. Number three, generate public revenue. The revenue from this tax could fund infrastructure, public services, and other communal needs without taxing productive work or investment. Why Australia needs a land value tax. The housing affordability crisis. In Australia, home ownership has long been a symbol of success and stability. However, over the past few decades, property prices have skyrocketed, especially in major cities like Sydney and Melbourne. For many Australians, buying a home has become an unattainable dream, leading to a growing divide between property owners and renters. There are several reasons for this housing affordability crisis. Speculation. Property investors often buy land with the sole intention of holding onto it until its value rises. This speculative behaviour drives up land prices, making it harder for families and first-time buyers to afford a home. Government subsidies, policies like negative gearing and capital gains tax exemptions are intended to support housing investment, but they often have the opposite effect. These incentives make it easier for investors to hold on to multiple properties, further inflating the market and putting home ownership out of reach for many Australians. Underutilised land. Much of the land in urban areas is underdeveloped or held vacant, waiting for prices to rise even higher. This reduces the amount of available housing and drives up prices for everyone. A land value tax would address these issues head on by taxing the unimproved value of land. It would discourage speculation, encourage landowners to develop or sell unused land, and ultimately bring down the cost of housing. Rising inequality. Australia has one of the highest levels of wealth inequality among developed countries, and much of this inequality is tied to property ownership. Property owners benefit from rising land values, while those without property struggle to keep up. The divide between landowners and renters has created a cycle where wealth accumulates with those who already have property, leaving others behind. A land value tax would help to reduce this inequality by redistributing some of the unearned wealth generated by land ownership. An LVT could make it easier for people to enter the property market and benefit from economic growth. How a land value tax would work in practice. Calculating the tax. A land value tax is based on the unimproved value of land, which is the value of the land itself without any buildings or developments. This value is largely determined by location, access to amenities, and the general desirability of the area. In urban areas, land values are usually higher due to proximity to jobs, public transport, and services. Assessing the value of land is something governments already do for property tax purposes. In Australia, local councils assess land values regularly, so implementing a land value tax would not require a completely new system of valuation. Implementing the tax. If Australia were to replace its current property and land taxes with a single land value tax, it would simplify the tax system and ensure that everyone contributes fairly. The tax rate could be set to generate enough revenue to replace some or all existing taxes on labour and productivity, such as income tax and business tax. This could make the tax system more efficient and less burdensome on workers and businesses. Benefits of a land value tax for Australia. Reducing speculation and making housing affordable. One of the main advantages of land value tax is its ability to discourage speculation land holding. When landowners face an annual cost for holding valuable land, they're more likely to develop it or sell it to someone who will. This would increase the supply of land available for housing and reduce prices, making home ownership more accessible to Australians. Generating stable revenue for public services. Unlike income and business taxes, which can fluctuate with the economy, a land value tax provides a stable source of revenue. Land doesn't disappear during economic downturns, and its value is relatively stable. This makes an LVT an ideal way to fund public services, infrastructure, and social programs that benefit all Australians. Promoting fairness and reducing inequality. A land value tax aligns with the principle that the benefits of land ownership come from society as a whole. By taxing the value of land, we ensure that landowners contribute back to the community. This creates a fairer system where wealth generated from land is shared more equitably, reducing inequality and supporting those who don't own property. Existing mechanisms for land value assessment in Australia. This provides regular assessments of land values. How the Valuer General's Office works. The Valuer General's Office in New South Wales, as in other states, regularly assesses the unimproved value of land, which is precisely the basis for a land value tax. This process involves determining the market value of the land itself without considering any buildings or improvements. These valuations are already used for property tax purposes, so adapting them for a land value tax would be straightforward. On the Valuer General's website, the public can view land values which are updated regularly and used by councils to calculate property rates. This system ensures transparency and accuracy in Australian land value assessments, providing ready-made framework for implementing a land value tax. By leveraging this existing infrastructure, Australia could introduce an LVT with minimal additional administrative costs, focusing instead on fine-tuning the tax rate and structure to achieve desired economic outcomes. Advantages of using existing infrastructure. Since the Valuer General's Office already performs the assessment needed for a land value tax, Australia wouldn't need to create a new bureaucratic system. The valuation methods used by the Valuer General are standardized and well documented, ensuring that land values are assessed fairly and consistently. This minimizes the complexity of implementing an LVT and reduces the potential for errors or manipulation. By using the data already collected by the Valuer General's Office, Australia could also make the tax system more transparent. Because land values are publicly available, Australians could easily see how their taxes are calculated. This transparency could increase public support for the tax, especially as people recognize the fairness of taxing land based on its location and community value, rather than penalizing productive work or investments by taxing people's income and businesses. Addressing common misconceptions. Won't a land value tax harm property owners? Some worry that a land value tax would place an unfair burden on property owners, but this isn't the case. A land value tax only taxes the value of the land itself, not the buildings or improvements on it. This means property owners can reduce their tax burden by developing the land or using it productively. Additionally, the tax would replace other taxes on income or investment, so the overall tax burden wouldn't necessarily increase. Won't this discourage development? In fact, the opposite is true. Because the tax is based on the land's value, regardless of its use, owners are motivated to develop their land rather than let it sit vacant. This encourages construction and economic activity, leading to more vibrant cities and a stronger economy. A path forward for Australia. A land value tax inspired by Henry George's idea offers a powerful solution to some of Australia's most pressing economic challenges. By discouraging speculation, lowering housing costs, and generating stable revenue, an LVT could create a fairer and more prosperous society. This single tax system would reward productive use of land, reduce inequality, and help more Australians achieve the dream of home ownership. As we look for ways to improve Australia's housing system and economy, it's time to consider the wisdom of Henry George and the potential of a land value tax. It's a straightforward, fair, and effective way to create a better future for all Australians.